Dear guests, the next panel discussion is Policy Priorities and Challenges through the Lens of the European Parliament and the EU Budget for 2028 to 2034. Please take your seat while our speakers prepare for the panel.
Good morning and welcome to our panel on policy priorities and challenges for the European Parliament and the EU budget 2028-2034. We are going to discuss about money, so I'm starting with some numbers. On July, the Commission presented its proposal for an ambitious and dynamic multi-annual financial framework accounting to almost 2 trillion euros. This amount is look big, but actually is not very big. It is only 1.26% of the EU gross national income compared to the United States. The federal budget of the United States is 23% of the GDP. So in the coming next months, the European Union will have to decide how to spend its money at a time of growing demands. We need to invest more in areas like green energy, digital technology, defense, and preparing for possible new member states. At the same time, there are ongoing pressures such as limited financial resources, economic inequalities, and the need to keep the EU socially and regionally balanced. In our panel today, we are going to discuss this issue with Charis Polycarpou, head of the Economic Policy Bureau and member of the Political Bureau of AKEL, and Yasar Aydin. He is a senior expert at SWP and especially at the Center for Applied Turkish Studies in Berlin. But first, we begin with a video message from Sophia, Russack, researcher fellow at the Center for the European Policy Studies.
Hello, everybody. It's a pity that I cannot be there with you in person for this very interesting panel and discussion, but I'm happy to have the opportunity to be given some space in this way to share a little bit my thoughts and my opinion on the topic that's discussed. Now, this panel is about the policy priorities and the European Parliament's take on the policy priorities of the EU and the MFF. And so I was thinking, in addition to the conversations about the policies and the content, would be interesting to contribute with a few thoughts about the decision-making dynamics inside the European Parliament as they play out at the moment, because there has been quite a big shift, and I am observing quite a new decision-making dynamics inside the Parliament. So I thought it would be worthwhile to elaborate a little bit on that. Now, we should not. I mean, it's always worthwhile to remind where the European Parliament came from, and how the decision-making dynamic used to be for a very, very long time. Because only in 2019 the so-called Grand Coalition ended. What was that? That was the time, which by the way prevailed over 40 years. In which the two biggest groups, the Social Democratic S&D and the Christian Democratic Conservative EPP, in which they had 50% of the seat, and that meant that effectively decisions could be made with these two groups alone, and that due to the fragmentation of the political landscape and the diversification of the voter will that changed, and in 2019 for the first time, as I said, in 40 years, the two parties were not enough anymore, but instead they needed a third partner, and that was the Liberals. And sometimes also the Greens. So then something emerged, what was adopted as the von der Leyen Commission, because that was the first term of Ursula von der Leyen between 2019 and 24, where most of the Commission's proposals were decided on by a majority made up of S&D, EPP, and the Liberals, and as I said, sometimes the Greens. Now, that already was a new decision, a new dynamics. So that was quite a big change in internal decision-making procedures. But what happened in 2024 was another change to this, and that was that not only the European Parliament became more fragmented, but it also became increasingly polarized, and the fringes, especially the far right, Eurosceptic end, and those groups on the far right end, gained in seats. And I mean, now we're looking at about 26% of members of European Parliament that sit to the right of the EPP. Now, so not only has the parliament become more fragmented, and the two biggest parties have lost their majorities, but also the fringes have gained, and particularly the far right. Now, that would not be enough, let's say, to justify my concern and also my contribution to the topic. It's not only that the far right has gained ground, because frankly this is something that we see already for a long time. We see already in the past 20 years that far right parties have gained more and more seats in the European Parliament. So it's a steady, slow increase. But there's two things that have changed now, 2024, I mean, with the last elections in June 2024. And the first one is that the European People's Party, so the Conservatives, they are now willing to make decisions together with the far right. And so that is really a new dynamics, because so far there was what we call the cordon sanitaire. So this means that is the agreement of all the pro-European forces to not include the far right in the decision making. And that was, something that, all the pro-European, pro-democratic parties subscribe to. But this is really, that is really not intact anymore in the European Parliament at the moment, especially in the EPP. And the EPP, in the last term, I mean, in the 2019 to 24 term, there a lot of decisions have been made that were, from their point of view, way too green, way too progressive. The whole Green Deal package, for instance. And they have the feeling that they had to carry in this von der Leyen coalition. They have the feeling that their conservative voice has been drowned out, and they had to pass through and decide on or support a lot of decisions that actually are against their conservative nature. And now the tide has turned, and it's now their time to kind of regain control and push through the conservative policy agenda. And from their perspective, it's almost irrespective with which majority that is possible. And so what we see a lot at the moment is that they start to negotiate with the Social Democrats, the Liberals, and try to find common ground here. But there's always a threat behind, like, if you don't agree with us, we will turn to the right to make decisions and to find agreement, to find majorities with the far right, because that is very important. What also has changed in 2024 is not only that the European People's Party is willing to find majorities to the right, but also that they can. Because what is new is that the EPP, including all the MEPs that sit to the right of them, have more than 50%. So what used to be, before 2019, the big coalition between SD and EPP, and what was later then, the von der Leyen Commission of progressive center forces of Social Democrats, Christian Democrats, and Liberals, is now a majority. I mean, this majority can still pass decisions, and they effectively do. So they also still have 50%. But who does not have a majority anymore are all the parties that sit in the center left and to the left, and that is a big change from the last term. So between the term before 24 and the term that we're in now, that this center-left majority is none anymore. But instead, the right to far-right emergency is emerging. So that means the European...
So Mrs. Russack gave us describe the political landscape in the European Parliament. It's a challenging landscape. But let's start our discussion now. We are going to discuss about policies in this context. So I'm starting with Mr. Aydin. European Union want to spend more money in energy, defense, security. So, and Turkey want to be part of this procedure. So my first question is, in what ways can Turkey contribute to European security and energy autonomy?
So, Kalimera, I'm happy to be here in Cyprus, and thank you for having me here. So, Turkey can contribute in many ways to the security of European Union. First of all, Turkey is regional power balancing Russia, for example. And in the Ukrainian war, Turkey's policy, Turkey aligned itself with European policy. Turkey is supporting Ukraine also militarily, blocked Russian warships through the Turkish straits, for example. And Turkey did not recognize the annexation of Crimea. This is important. Turkey is contributing to the security of European Union in this way. And also Turkey has an increasing, developing defense industry. This is important. There are a lot of projects between Turkish and European companies, and Turkish defense industry can help to fill the gap in the European defense industry. There are shortage in the production of ammunition and so on, and Turkey is also playing a big role in the drone industry, so therefore can Turkey contribute a lot. Security has also technical dimensions, for example. It's not only on balancing Russia, but also, for example, we experience transition to e-mobility. Cars becoming e-cars and becoming smart devices. And when BYD invest, for example, in Turkey, when they produce in Turkey and when they build a production site in Turkey, they will have more opportunity, for example, to use this in Turkey produced electro cars, not only to export it to European countries, to countries of European Union, but also they will have also information gathering and intelligence gathering via this smart devices. And here can Turkey play a big role in cooperation projects with European countries, with European Union, and therefore to wrap up, Turkey is a NATO member, is a member of the European Sky Shield, and Turkey is very keen, although there is economic, there is political and diplomatic tensions, of course. I will not neglect that. But Turkey is very keen to be part of European security architecture. The Turkish defense minister said if there is one time a European army, Turkey should be part of this army. So we see a country which is very keen to cooperate with European countries with the EU, and I think this is important, and this also gives a leverage to Brussels.
There is two problems in that. The first problem is the democratic deficit in Turkey. Okay?
Yes.
And there is also two member states, Greece and Cyprus, that see Turkey as a threat. So
Yes.
how can we overcome this?
Yes, there are not only two problems, there are many problems. But, let's start with the problem between Greece and Turkey.
Yes.
Of course, Greece sees Turkey as a threat. Other way around, Turkey sees also Greece as a threat. We had a time for 4 years, it was the danger of a confrontation. No, it's passé. I know that both countries are communicating via diplomatic channels, and in this diplomatic door channels, Germany plays also a role. Germany brought Turkey and Greece together because Germany has a different role than France, for example. So Germany tries to be neutral between Turkey and Germany. I know this neutrality is seen different in Cyprus and in Greece, but yes, Germany tries to be, and therefore I'm very happy on that communication between Greece and Turkey. And Turkey did not send ships to look after oil, for example, in the Aegean, and now Ankara de-escalated. I'm happy on that. The other issue is democratic backsliding in Turkey. Yes, Turkey is no more a functioning democracy as we know it from Europe. It's no more a liberal democracy. We see rule of law is very problematic, so I'm very pessimistic. I couldn't say that there is a functioning division of powers in Turkey. But Turkey needs Europe, therefore Brussels can make such conditionality. They can make cooperation dependent by either a new reform process or stopping the autocratization. So Turkey is very keen to modernize the customs union, for example. And European Union, Brussels can combine it to the conditionality of stopping the autocratization. Turkey and Europe, the trade between Turkey and Europe is amounts 210 trillions, billions. This is 1/3 of the whole Turkish trade. So therefore, Europe has many leverages in the hand to force Turkey, at least to stop the autocratization in the Turkey. It is not only about normative, it's not a normative issue. So we know that in this geopolitical context, global geopolitical constellation, we have also how to say, an alliance of autocrats, for example. So if Brussels does not actively try to influence Turkey in a way towards democracy, it will be also a problem in its foreign policy, and it will also a problem for its goal becoming a global actor. So Europe needs Turkey to become a global actor, but it also needs to have a more democratic Turkey, a country in which the government recognize and rule of law and so on.
You mentioned the leverage. Until now, this leverage is not working.
It's not working because
still Turkey is occupied power in Cyprus, and there is tension now again between Greece and Turkey.
You are right, but we had a time where this leverage worked very well. Between 2000 or let's say 1999 to 2009 or 10, it worked very well. I think it does not work because European countries, especially decision makers, think they don't have this leverage. When I talk to German politicians, for example, or from politicians from other countries, I realize that they can't realize what kind of leverage they have. They say when we don't allow the export of some weapon systems or ammunition, Turkey will take it from other countries like South Korea and so on. This is true. Of course, Turkey is no more a country as we know it from the 60s, but still, European Union has many leverage in the hand modernization of customs union would be one leverage, one important leverage. But we need a strategy. There is no strategy in Brussels, and there is no coherent strategy, and there is no coherence. And therefore, Turkey can take advantage from the situation. We need a coherent European Union, and when Brussels could act in a unified way, then it will have more leverage on Turkey, and I think it will function. Not fully maybe, but there are still some things to do, some leverage in the hand.
Thank you very much. Charis, before I ask you about competitiveness and the economy, do you want to comment about Turkey and the relation between EU and Turkey?
Ναι, καλημέρα. Υπάρχει μετάφραση, μπορούμε να μιλούμε στα ελληνικά. Ωραία.
Ναι, μισό λεπτό.
Ωραία. Ναι. Να κάνω 2-3 σχόλια. Και η αλήθεια είναι ότι ο τίτλος του σημερινού πανέλ ήταν λίγο διαφορετικός, αλλά ξεκινούμε διαφορετικά την προσέγγιση και να μας δώσει την ευκαιρία να χτίσουμε από εκεί για το ευρύτερο γεωπολιτικό. Το πρώτο σχόλιο που θέλω να κάνω είναι ότι η συνεργασία της Τουρκίας με την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, εκτός από δικαιώματα, έχει και υποχρεώσεις. Άρα λοιπόν η όποια αναβάθμιση των σχέσεων της Τουρκίας με την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση θα πρέπει να γίνεται υπό το πρίσμα του σεβασμού των κυπρογενών υποχρεώσεων που έχει η Τουρκία, του γεγονότος ότι θα πρέπει καταρχήν να αναγνωρίσει τα κράτη-μέλη, όλα τα κράτη-μέλη της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης και βεβαίως να αναγνωρίσει και την κυριαρχία αυτών των κρατών μελών. Αυτό είναι το πρώτο που θέλω να πω. Το δεύτερο, είναι σημαντικό την ώρα που συζητούμε για αναβάθμιση των σχέσεων μεταξύ Τουρκίας και Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης, να λαμβάνουμε υπόψη ότι όταν κράτη-μέλη της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης προχωρούν τον ενεργειακό του σχεδιασμό, προσπαθούν να προχωρήσουν στη διαδικασία της αξιοποίησης των κοιτασμάτων, και μιλώ για την περίπτωση και της Κύπρου αλλά και της Ελλάδας, υπάρχει μια επιθετική πολιτική από πλευράς της Τουρκίας. Άρα λοιπόν, την ώρα που η Τουρκία φιλοδοξεί να γίνει συνεργάτης της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης και να προχωρήσει τη διαδικασία ένταξης, αναβαθμίζοντας την αύξηση των αμυντικών δαπανών, θα πρέπει να λαμβάνει υπόψη ότι δεν μπορεί να προχωρεί εφόσον δεν σέβεται τον τρόπο με τον οποίο κράτη-μέλη της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης προσπαθούν να αξιοποιήσουν τους φυσικούς τους πόρους και στην ουσία να αμφισβητεί την ίδια την κυριαρχία των κρατών μέλων.
Λοιπόν, να μιλήσουμε λίγο για τον προϋπολογισμό. Προσπαθούν σε ένα προϋπολογισμό που έχεις συγκεκριμένος, τα 2-3 που είπαμε, να χωρέσουν και νέες δράσεις, όπως είναι η ασφάλεια, κυρίως η ασφάλεια και η άμυνα. Την ίδια ώρα είναι μπροστά μας οι προκλήσεις που έχει η ευρωπαϊκή κοινωνία. Για παράδειγμα, το στεγαστικό είναι ένα κοινό πρόβλημα σε όλα τα κράτη-μέλη, όπως κοινό πρόβλημα είναι και το κόστος της ενέργειας. Ταυτόχρονα θέλουμε η Ευρώπη να γίνει εξίσου ανταγωνιστική, όπως είναι η Κίνα και οι Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες. Χωράνε όλα αυτά σε έναν προϋπολογισμό?
Θέλω να ξεκινήσω πηγαίνοντας έτσι μια 20ετία πίσω από που ξεκίνησε η νέα εποχή της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης, ιδιαίτερα στο οικονομικό κομμάτι. Η στρατηγική της Λισαβόνας έβαζε ως στόχο η ευρωπαϊκή οικονομία να γίνει πιο ανταγωνιστική οικονομία παγκοσμίως. Από τότε πέρασε μια δεκαετία κυρίως μέτρων ανοίγματος της αγοράς, επίδρασης πάνω στις εργασιακές σχέσεις, ιδιωτικοποιήσεων, που έφτασε και μέχρι την χρηματοπιστωτική κρίση του 2008. Η πορεία που ακολούθησε είχε κυρίως χαρακτήρα πολιτικών λιτότητας και έχουμε φτάσει στο σήμερα, και το πρώτο σημείο που θέλω να καταγράψω είναι ότι από το στόχο της πιο ανταγωνιστικής οικονομίας παγκοσμίως, τώρα οι ευρωπαϊκές οικονομίες είναι στο στάδιο που προσπαθούν να φτάσουν ή, εν πάση περιπτώσει, να πλησιάσουν την τεχνολογική ανάπτυξη των ΗΠΑ. Έχουν ένα σημαντικό έλλειμμα εκεί. Και την ίδια ώρα η Κίνα φαίνεται ότι στο κομμάτι της πράσινης μετάβασης που η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση είχε την πρωτοκαθεδρία, όχι μόνο την ξεπερνά, αλλά είναι και πρωτοπόρος. Για παράδειγμα, στο κομμάτι των ηλεκτρικών αυτοκινήτων έχει προχωρήσει με πολύ πιο γρήγορους ρυθμούς. Άρα το πρώτο είναι ότι σε αυτόν τον στρατηγικό στόχο υπάρχουν βήματα πίσω. Η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, εκεί που ήθελε να είναι ένας παγκόσμιος ηγέτης, δυσκολεύεται και έχει στο τέλος της ημέρας συνάπτει συμφωνίες υπό το βάρος των εκβιασμών. Θυμίζω ότι η τελευταία συμφωνία του Τραμπ με την Φοντερ Λάιεν όχι μόνο ήταν, μπορώ να πω έτσι, ήταν αδύναμη για την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, αλλά είχε και σοβαρή επίδραση στους ευρωπαϊκούς λαούς. Να πω ότι μόνο 2 σημεία μόνο, 600 δισεκατομμύρια επενδύσεις δόθηκαν στην Αμερική για να υπογράψει τη συμφωνία στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση και 750 δισεκατομμύρια αγορά ενέργειας από την Ευρώπη. Τούτα τα 2 σημεία με φέρνουν στο δεύτερο κομμάτι. Το ότι ο ευρωπαϊκός προϋπολογισμός έχει να αντιμετωπίσει 3 βασικά προβλήματα που είναι στην ουσία της ευρωπαϊκής οικονομικής πολιτικής. Το πρώτο είναι η απουσία σοβαρής βιομηχανικής πολιτικής, που τούτο συνεπάγεται και σε μειωμένη καινοτομία και έρευνα και άρα δημιουργεί ανταγωνιστικό μειονέκτημα διεθνώς. Το δεύτερο είναι πολύ ψηλές τιμές ενέργειας στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, με αποτέλεσμα η παραγωγή όχι μόνο να έχει ανταγωνιστικό μειονέκτημα, αλλά να οδηγεί και για παράδειγμα στο κλείσιμο αυτοκινητοβιομηχανιών στη Γερμανία. Στο πολύ ψηλό κόστος για τους λαούς της Ευρώπης, στις πληθωριστικές πιέσεις, όλα τούτα θα έπρεπε να αντικατοπτρίζονται με το στοιχείο του κατεπήγοντος μέσα από το προσεχές πολυετές δημοσιονομικό πλαίσιο. Κατά την άποψή μου, δεν συμβαίνει. Και το τρίτο είναι η κοινωνική κρίση. Η κρίση στο στεγαστικό, στις πλήστες ευρωπαϊκές χώρες υπάρχει στεγαστικό πρόβλημα, το οποίο διονγκώνεται από πολλούς παράγοντες, πέραν από το υψηλό κόστος στέγασης, από τη στροφή, για παράδειγμα, διαφόρων αγορών στη βραχυχρόνια μίσθωση, στα Airbnb, που τούτο μειώνει την πρόσφορα ζήτησης, το γεγονός ότι η μισθή και άρα τα διαθέσιμα εισόδημα επαρέμεινε σε μέτριων προς χαμηλών επίπεδων, όλα τούτα δημιουργούν μια σημαντική στεγαστική κρίση και κατά συνέπεια υποβαθμίζουν και το βιωτικό επίπεδο της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης, που φιλοδοξούσε να ήταν η πιο να έχει το καλύτερο βιωτικό επίπεδο διεθνώς. Άρα θα ανέμενε κανείς, για να φτάσω και στην κατακλείδα της πρώτης μου τοποθέτησης, θα ανέμενε κανείς ότι το πολιτές δημοσιονομικό πλαίσιο θα είχε ένα χαρακτήρα που θα αντιμετώπιζε το ανταγωνιστικό μειονέκτημα στην καινοτομία, θα αντιμετώπιζε το υψηλό κόστος ενέργειας και το γεγονός ότι έχουμε 4 φορές μεγαλύτερη τιμή από ό,τι, για παράδειγμα, οι ΗΠΑ, θα αντιμετώπιζε την κοινωνική κρίση, το χαμηλό βιωτικό επίπεδο σε πολλούς Ευρωπαίους πολίτες. Αντί τούτου, βλέπουμε ότι τούτες οι δαπάνες των ευρωπαϊκών προϋπολογισμών στην καλύτερη μένουν σταθερές ή σε πολλές επικεφαλίδες μειώνονται. Στο αντίβαρον βλέπουμε μια τρομακτική αύξηση αυτών που ονομάζουμε δαπανών της οικονομίας του πολέμου. Να πω μόνο ένα νούμερο, ότι στο προηγούμενο πολιετές τούτες οι δαπάνες ήταν στα 13 δισεκατομμύρια, στα 12,5 δισεκατομμύρια. Τώρα είναι 10 φορές, η πρόβλεψη είναι ότι θα είναι 10 φορές περισσότερο. Και η δεκαπλάσια αύξηση δεν περιλαμβάνει το τι θα δαπανούν τα κράτη-μέλη για να φτάσουν το στόχο του 5%, το οποίο θέτει το ΝΑΤΟ. Άρα το ερώτημα, ρητορικό, δεν θα πάρει απάντηση, αλλά για το ερώτημα πολιτικής, είναι πώς θα καταφέρουν οι ευρωπαϊκές οικονομίες και η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση να καλύψουν το χρηματοδοτικό κενό χωρίς να υποβαθμίσουν την ποιότητα ζωής, τα εργασιακά δικαιώματα, αυτού που θέλουν να είναι η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, ένας χώρος ειρήνης, ασφάλειας, συνεργασίας, σεβασμού των αρχών, την ώρα που θα πρέπει να υπεραυξήσουν τις δαπάνες για στρατιωτικούς σκοπούς.
Έχουμε δυστυχώς 5 λεπτά για να κλείσει το session. Υπάρχει κάποια ερώτηση από το κοινό?
Sorry, I just want to ask you, referring to the democratic deficit in Turkey, you suggested that Brussels should assert a more decisive position, if I could describe it like that, but rather strategizing a policy on it. Don't you feel that there is also a deficit from the opposition in Turkey to formulate such a step plan? I would think that the opposition in Turkey should be the one pointing out to Brussels the way forward and the way that it can actually assist Turkey internally to evolve to a democratic state.
Yes. Does it function? Yes. Sorry. Thank you for the question. You are right, of course. It's also, first of all, the business of the Turkish opposition. It was until May, let's say, until 2 or 3 years, it was very weak because the main opposition party was not willing to cooperate with the pro-Kurdish party, for example, and the former leader of the CHP had a very distant attitude towards protest movements, for example. But the new leader, as we know, till March of this year, is not afraid of having contact to the streets, having contact and cooperating with protest movements, youth movements, and also cooperating with the pro-Kurdish CHP. Therefore, it became better, the opposition there, and they have also a good candidate, for example, the mayor of Istanbul. Now he is in prison. Of course, we don't know what will happen, and will he stay there as long as Demirtas, for example, Selahattin Demirtas. But if you follow Turkey, for example, in the opening of the Turkish parliament, the CHP boycotted this opening and said, our mayors are in prison, so why should I go and applaud the president? He's not. He questioned also the legitimacy of the president because in US, the US embassy said. He said like this, he said, Turkish leader is a big leader, but he needs sort of legitimacy, and we give him legitimacy. And every people know that Erdogan is coming to the parliament and giving this picture with the opposition because he have problem with his legitimacy. And most of the parties in the opposition, the party of Davutoğlu and Babacan and so on, they give with them this picture, and they are in the parliament because Kılıçdaroğlu pulled them into the Turkish parliament. Otherwise, they would never be in parliament. So still we have a problem. We have an opposition problem, and I'm also a little bit upset by the DEM party. When Erdogan defeats CHP as a next step, he will destroy the DEM party. But I don't know why they are making a politic like this. So they have still hope that Erdogan will solve the Kurdish issue. He made in the past different steps to solve the Kurdish issue, but I don't believe in that. This is a tactic. It's a tactical move. Erdogan needs the Kurds because of the threat of Israel. He don't want close relations between Syrian Kurds and so. But in Turkey, you are right. There are still opposition party leaders. They are not aware of this situation and going to parliament and giving this picture with Erdogan. So in this sense, what can Europe, Brussels do in this sense? But there are still other levers in the hand.
Thank you very much. In that point, we must close our discussion. Thank you, Yasar, that give us insight about the EU-Turkey relation. maybe someone ask why discuss about Turkey. Turkey is a candidate country, so it is a beneficiary from budget from the European budget, and Charis gave us the political context and the social, political, economic context of the policy priorities of the new EU budget. Thank you very much for your participation. Good morning. Bye.